Call this meeting to order. It's the City Council Common Council meeting for November 23rd, 2020 at 6 p.m. We are in the council chambers. The agenda has been posted. The media has been notified. Val, please call a roll.
Barnett.
Here.
Larson.
Here.
Mikulowski.
Here.
Kelly.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Holt. Here. Daniel.
Here.
Rossing.
Here.
Mayor Frederickson.
Here. We do have quorum. All please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comments as received by the mayor, the city clerk, or council members. I know that we have a couple of people out there that have some public comments to be read in. Is there anybody in the public? No, thank you. We'll start out with Eileen.
I'm going to take my mask off just for clarity. I have two public comments here. They're both from the same person, but have completely different focus. The first is from Tom Giroux, and he says, "My name is Tom Giroux, 604 Reich Street, and chair of the Tree Board. The Tree Board, with assistance from City Administrator Zach Vruwink, has completed an application to America in Bloom and Canadian National Railway to plant 83 trees in city boulevards. We will be following closely the 2016 Urban Forestry Inventory and Plan. The plan calls to plant 83 trees per year in order to keep abreast of losses from diseases, pests, street construction, and routine removals. The grant provides 50% of the funds for this project. The match will come from in-kind sources in the existing tree budget within the Parks program, service organizations, and volunteers. No new funds or funding sources are necessary to match this grant. The planting of these trees will be accomplished with the combination of volunteers, city parks, and public works staff. Although the final planting locations have not been determined, we plan to replace downtown trees that did not survive, finish planting Brown Street from Frederick Street to the Viaduct, and the Wabash neighborhood. Your support for this grant application would be appreciated, and he will be available by text during this meeting if we have any questions." His second letter is in regard, again, Tom Giroux, same address. I'm not going to read the first. Well, the first sentence is, "You've been flocked." "I sincerely apologize for calling you a flock of turkeys on social media." Okay. "This is your annual challenge to support the Salvation Army Red Kettle campaign. Last year, I made the mistake of mentioning names and inadvertently left off a few people out. So thank you to all of you who have supported our efforts to help our friends and neighbors. I will single out Chief Williams, who never passes a kettle without making a contribution. Thank you, Chief Williams. 86 cents of every dollar is returned to Rhinelander to help your friends and neighbors through a tough patch. The other 14 cents goes to things like disaster relief and to support our veterans. As you know, the pandemic has wreaked havoc on our economy, and there's a great deal of unemployment. Your support is needed more than ever. You can sign up to ring bells with strict social distancing at registertoring.com. The Salvation Army respects and honors individuals' decision to not ring this year because of your personal situation. So there are other ways to donate, such as virtual bell ringing, flocking the kettle, or just making a larger than normal donation to the Rhinelander Salvation Army, P.O. Box 1081, Rhinelander, or online also at registertoring.com. You can contact Tom at 715-401-1578 or tjerow@gmail.com with any questions you might have. Happy Thanksgiving and Merry Christmas to you and your families.
Thank you, and thank you for reading those.
You're welcome.
I have a couple of them too.
Excellent. Gerald?
Also, both from the same person. This is from Jim Leschke on North Barrett Avenue. The first one I'm writing to you out of concern regarding the housing development on the Timber Drive property formerly owned by the city and sold on October 12, 2020 to a developer unidentified in the motion, later revealed to be Settlers Village. The motion uses language which may be understandable to a lawyer, but certainly not to a layman taxpayer. Specifically, quote, with an incremental increase in the value of the property to cover the purchase price of $100,000, unquote. When the issue was discussed in the Planning Commission meeting on November 3rd, additional information came to the surface. According to the report of the meeting in the November 7th edition of the Northwoods River News, Bergman, in parentheses, Sandra Bergman, a member of the Planning Commission, also noted that the Common Council approved the sale of the property with performance standards on October 26th. The sale price was $100,000, she said. However, the performance standards would reduce that price and, if all are achieved, would result in Odie getting the property for nothing, unquote. Although there is no reference to performance standards in Mr. Rossing's motion to sell the property, would you please explain what these standards are and how they are to be applied and evaluated with regard to this project? Are the, quote, performance standards, unquote, referred to by Ms. Bergman the same as, quote, with an incremental increase in the value of the property to cover the purchase price of $100,000, unquote? Or are these two different issues? If they are different, please explain how they're different. I'm deeply disappointed with the handling of this issue by our elected officials, as well as their paid advisors, parentheses, the mayor's assistant and city attorney, both of whom are seasoned municipal practitioners, close parentheses. The lack of openness and transparency, to say nothing of the lack of regard for taxpayers of the affected district, are quite shocking. And then he refers to his letter in the River News, November 20th. So much for openness and transparency. And he concludes, I would hope that the shrouds of secrecy will be eliminated in the future. That's the first letter. Second one has to do with the Police and Fire Commission. In looking at the agenda for City Council meeting tonight, I became aware of the effort to rescind an ordinance pertaining to the Police and Fire Commission, and I wish to share my thoughts about this with the council. While the Police and Fire Commission would have citizens believe that the adoption of the ordinance limiting its membership to residents of the city of Rhinelander was driven in large part by a, quote, personality conflict, unquote, it is important to carefully examine this requirement. The argument of, quote, personality conflict, unquote, plays into the hands of those who would believe that there is a, quote, good old boy, unquote, network that runs our city, and that rescinding this ordinance would allow another GOB, which I assume means good old boy, to be appointed to the Police and Fire Commission. This is not something that is needed by the city. I would suggest that you carefully and thoughtfully examine this idea. If there are not enough qualified, interested individuals who are residents of the city of Rhinelander to fill the Police and Fire Commission, then the commission, police, and fire departments should be disbanded and alternative arrangements made. I'm certain that there are enough qualified and interested individuals who would be willing to serve on the commission, but it may require a bit more effort on the part of officials to find them. Please do not rescind this ordinance. Jim Leschke, North Baird Avenue.
Thank you. Moving on to mayor's comments. I have none. We're taking care of business, getting a lot of things done, and it actually is an exciting time in City Hall, as our staff would agree. Meeting minutes, approval of the meeting minutes in November 9th, 2020 common council meeting. Val, would you like to speak on this real quick, just so we can clarify? And The packet that was sent out was just the draft form.
The Common Council minutes that you received online and in your packets was not the correct. That was just my format to fill in when I did the minutes. I have since sent that to you. If anybody else wants it, they can also email me and I will be happy to send that out. And I have given you paper copies tonight of the correct minutes for that meeting.
We appreciate it. Thank you. That being the
I
case,
move approval.
actually, we're going to wait to approve them when everybody has a chance to look at them and examine them. So we'll do it at the next meeting, just so you understand. Thank you. Ordinances, first reading. Ordinance 2020-13, amending 4.0225A, all-terrain utility terrain vehicles use. That's page 11 in your packet. Now comes the Common Council of the City of Rhinelander, Wisconsin, does hereby amend the ordinance 4.02.205A regarding all-terrain utility terrain vehicles use in the City of Rhinelander. The ordinance amended as to 4.02.205A, designation of all-terrain and utility vehicle routes. All streets in the City of Rhinelander are open to ATV UTVs except the following: Lincoln Street. This ordinance amendment shall be effective upon passage and publication. This ordinance was amended blank, passed blank, rejected by the City Council. This is the first reading of that ordinance. Any questions? Both chiefs were involved in the decision of this as far as staff, and we're moving it forward. No questions?
Any
Oh, sorry.
suggestion as to why it was excluded before?
Actually, historically, I can tell you that it was excluded the first time around due to blinkers. And it was there, those are the two sets of traffic that have 4 lanes virtually in them, where you could change lanes and a left or right-handed turn is not directly in front of the person in front of it. That being the case, that was the original exclusion. Am I correct, Chief? Yes. He's nodding yes. Eileen?
Can we just clarify that the only change to this ordinance, and this is just for public record, is that we are taking out the exception for North Stephen Street, north of Dwight Street, just so the public is aware. That's the only thing that's happening to this ordinance.
Sure. Thank you for that. That was that Stevens Street is being the one that's crossed off. The original ordinance excluded both Stevens and Lincoln. We are continuing to not allow traffic on Lincoln. There's not allowable ATV, UTV traffic on Lincoln. David?
So, motion to set public hearing for December 7th, Monday, December...
No.
No, it's the 14th,
14th.
excuse me. Monday, December 14th meeting.
Motion?
Larson, second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Where are we at? Sorry. Reports from boards, commissions, and committees. I'm going to actually ask Zach to report on the tree board as Eileen was unavailable.
Sure. So the tree board met last week, mostly to cover the grant application, which appears later on our agenda this evening. However, Tom Giroux also gave us a virtual tree tour of trees throughout the city, which was kind of a unique experience. And I know he's working on condensing that format for a much shorter version for council consideration. So I expect that to come at a future meeting. But we spent most of our time walking through the grant application, as I mentioned. Other than that, there was one referral, and that is to consider appointment of a city forester. Our ordinances allow for a citizen or staff member appointment as city forester. And so I'd expect that to come at the December council meeting, probably the 14th.
Thank you. I'll accept the motion.
Rossing, I'll make a motion to accept reports from boards, commissions, and committees.
Mikulowski, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Introduction of new business. Consider the recommendation to select a consultant to perform the housing needs assessment. Again, I'll turn this over to Zach, although there was a fair amount of discussion that we had on this also.
Yeah, a lot of back and forth on this. So as you recall, we solicited consultant interest to perform a housing needs assessment. Those were due, last month already ago, and we actually received a healthy response. We received 6 responses from consultants from all the way kind of nearby regional, I would say, Wisconsin firms, as well as throughout the Midwest, one East Coast. And we narrowed it down. We assembled a selection committee. The committee generally comprised of economic development, both at the county and at the more regional level, with Grow North, the chamber, the mayor, and I. Am I forgetting anybody else, Mayor, if that was a part of the committee? But essentially our role was to rank and evaluate the proposals based upon a set of criteria, and we can share the consensus with you all. But essentially, we narrowed it down to 3 of the 6 that we would do interviews with: MSA, Redevelopment Resources, MD Rofers, who have done work with the city before. MD Rofers is actually performing the zoning rewrite project. They teamed up together, considering MD Rofers generally doesn't do housing needs assessments individually, but they have knowledge of the community. And then the third being Asakura Robinson, which was a firm that, of all the firms, that was the one I was least familiar with, but they had some familiarity with the region, having vacationed in the area and recognized the importance of tourism housing. So we did reference checks on those 3, and ultimately we settled on MSA as our top choice. From a price standpoint, they were all generally in the range of 30 to 36,000. However, Redevelopment Resources and another firm, BAE, were over 40. In fact, 44 and 57,000 respectively. So essentially our recommendation to the council is to begin negotiations of a contract with MSA. We would bring that contract back through the council for their approval. And one additional point on this is we do need to settle the funding source yet. We wanted to first begin to figure out who we were going to work with before we went ahead and firmed up the funding source. But at this point, we're either recommending to use CDBG planning dollars, of which the city would be eligible for because of the LMI status, or EDA, Economic Development Administration dollars. Both come with a local match. However, they're pretty attractive programs. In fact, roughly 2/3 of the money to perform the assessment would be paid for by grant dollars. So that's basically the update on that topic. And again, our recommendations to select MSA, but to begin negotiations to bring back the contract before the council.
That being the case, this is one of the more interesting evaluations I've done so far, because there's 6 companies that came in. Carrie saw that too. There's up to 700 pages of information to cover. Yeah. Once again, they were picked for different reasons. The committee had different points of view on different parts of it or whatever, but in the end, I think the agreement was pretty concise. That being the case, if we want this done by March to start moving forward with those grant dollars or anything else, I'll accept a motion to move forward with discussions with MSA and the planning of the financial payment of it, or not. You can wait and. Okay,
Sorry,
go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead, Dave.
Motion to proceed forward with contract negotiation with MSA.
Mikulowski, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Discussion of capital improvement planning. Once again, a product that comes from our administrator and the staff. We appreciate all your effort.
Great. So normally our engineer would weigh in as well, but he's on vacation this week, so I'll cover the topic. But this comes as a result of a number of internal discussions. The city has a capital improvements plan, a 5-year plan that generally we would march toward adopting or adoption at the council level. And so it's been some time since there's been any amendments or updates to it. So staff and I pulled together early in the budget process to begin talking about capital improvements planning. Number one, to understand what's our goals and our objectives for next year, but also beyond, because most of our funding sources require a 2 to 3 or even a 5-year look if we're going to achieve any federal or state support. And so I'll try to flash up on the screen here, but essentially our goal is to account for all the variety of capital improvement planning. Generally, our under the street, our infrastructure below the surface is generally what drives those decisions. Of course, the street surface matters. That's what matters to most residents. That's what we experience when we drive the street or walk the street. But there's a lot more to it, of course. So, for example, water main breaks is also a common metric for the extent that the utilities under the surface have failed or are in the process of failing. So here's a rough draft of the 5-year plan. I'm sure it's very small on the screens, but I'll try to zoom in here. So for the nearest term project on the plan you'll see is 2023. There's one on here for 2021. I'll go there first, which is Timber Drive. The city has received a grant to accomplish a portion of this project from the state. The total project is estimated at $1.2 million. And we received a $450,000 grant from the state to accomplish that. So we'll be discussing that further at future meetings as it relates to the other funding sources, if we're going to use Pratt exclusively or if there's other grants that we wish to pursue to accomplish that. And then there's some other 2021 projects that are also being considered. We're getting some cost estimates on. There's some roads within the cemetery, Forest Home Cemetery, that need some street surface work, essentially a mill and overlay, similar to what we have done on Lincoln Street this year, and then possibly doing some work on Coon Street, mill and overlay, possibly doing some curb and gutter work. But then beyond that, we've tentatively planned for 2023 a number of streets listed here in green, which are Oneida Avenue, Lincoln to Frederick, King Street, Stevens to Oneida, Conroe Street, Courtney to Oneida, and Anderson, which is Pelham to Oneida. And again, a lot of these are utility projects really that are driving it, not necessarily just the street surfaces. So essentially the process is this: we identify those streets, we put a schedule associated with them, we identify what the engineer's estimate might be for the work, and then we submit intents to apply. And presently the city utilizes Town and Country to submit those intents to apply on behalf of the city. They do that at no charge. So we had them submit them by October 31st this year for the upcoming year's projects. So 23 for sure. And then we identify those future projects as well. So I know there was some requests to talk about specific streets. For example, Shepherd, Lincoln to Spring Lake Road, or Coolidge, Spring Lake Road to Timber. There's obviously some significant issues with the underground there, which would require some costly subsurface treatments and soil, probably some soil excavation and replacing the spoiled soils with something that's a bit more road ready in terms of supporting the street surface there. But those will be decisions we'll have to discuss. And so we wanted to at least throw the draft plan on the agenda for any discussion or conversation about how the city pulls together the capital improvements plan. Of course, we're not asking for any action tonight, but again, just a high-level introduction for all of you. And then we also, beyond streets and the underground utilities, we also take a look at buildings and facilities. I don't believe that this has been identified in city planning in the past, so we took a stab at what the various buildings and facilities work will need to be done. And then we have some of the fleet things on there, which we've actually already started to identify through the budget process, and then we'll do so through the future borrowing initiative. So that gives you a sense of what's gone into the capital improvement planning process thus far. I'm happy to answer any questions or take any feedback.
Any questions for Zach?
Can
We will
get
look
a
for formal
copy of
adoption
that?
too at a future meeting, so it's not like this will be the last time you'll see it.
Zach, can we get a copy of that spreadsheet?
He'll
Yep,
email
I
it to
certainly
you
will
right now.
email it out to you all.
Thank you.
I didn't want to do so because there's some questions I have on here for our engineer yet, so it's gone through a couple of revisions, and I don't know if we have consensus on it yet, but I certainly will get you all a copy of it.
No questions. Moving on. Shared ride taxi solicitation intent to award. It's page 12 in your packets.
Happy to take this one as
Yep.
well, Mayor. The city solicited shared ride taxi proposals. Again, this is a DOT requirement. Every 5 years, we must solicit and negotiate a contract. We received 2 proposals. I want to thank Council President Rossing and the mayor and Wendy, who we all sat together on a solicitation review committee to work through them. We received proposals from our current provider, Rapid Cab and Running Incorporated, which is out of the Viroqua area, which has operations in a number of municipalities, over a dozen, I believe, throughout Wisconsin. And so you'll see that intent to award letter in the packet. This is really an informational item only,
21.
because we'll still have to negotiate a contract that will come before the council at the 14th meeting. So at this point, I just wanted to make everyone aware of the conclusion of the procurement committee, which was the 4 of us.
For information only, but to share it. Thank you. Discuss police and fire commissioner residency requirements referral from the PFC. This is page 13 in your packet. Oh, no, wait. Yep, it is. I'll open up the fact that this is just discussion, but I will take motions on this as far as if you feel that you're ready to decide or would like to make this decision made. Yeah.
Well, may I speak?
You absolutely can, Gerald.
I'm opposed to making any change. It defies logic to me that a commission of the city shouldn't be made up of people from the city.
Yep. There's 2 parts to that, just so you understand, too. There was the part where the residency of the officer, and then there was the part, the residency of the commissioners.
Yeah.
But yeah,
well, the residency of the officers, I understand the issue, and I think that's a little more compelling. My concerns are how far away we want to let people come. I was associated with a smaller village some years back that had a harder time getting police than Rhinelander, I think, and ended up with a guy who lived 50 miles away and was driving 100 miles an hour to get there if there was an emergency or he was called in. And fortunately, nothing bad came of it. But what is a big concern if people are having to do that kind of thing. So I would be opposed to making the distance very large. I'm not sure exactly what they're proposing, though. I haven't seen that.
Thank you. Andrew.
I guess I just have a question. If somebody owned a business in the city of Rhinelander, but yet they lived in Pine Lake or Pelican, wouldn't they be, does that automatically put them out because they don't live in the city?
Correct. Not currently. That does not allow them to be on the commission or whatever. I'm going to ask Lloyd to stand up real quick and speak on the recruitment / retention / possibility of our area when it comes to officers, to that portion of it. Both. We're actually discussing the whole letter. It says, oh, you are correct. Never mind. Actually, tell you the truth, that is not on the agenda. It is just the commissioners as it's listed by the agenda. The letter itself refers to both. I apologize for that. David, did you have anything?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I recognize that Eileen's correct. It's not, it's not agendized to talk about officers. So speaking in terms of the Police and Fire Commission, the commissioners themselves, I understand there's surface validity to the idea of, well, it's a city commission, so the people on it should be, but I don't see a compelling reason why. I'm open to somebody giving me a compelling reason why the decisions, deliberations, choices that members of that commission would make, that a residency within the municipality would make a difference in their ability to execute their duties. But perhaps I have a poor imagination, but I'm not thinking of any that I could see as specific. So, I mean, I'm open to hearing others' views on that, but I don't think I don't think there's a compelling reason to keep it. Thank you.
Tom?
I would make a motion to table this item until we can hear from the police chief at our next meeting.
The police chief can speak on this now. He can't speak on the police officers.
Oh, all right, well.
So would you like to pull your motion off? Well, we can just wait
Well,
for it
nobody
not to be
seconded it,
seconded.
so it's gonna die.
There you go. Go ahead, Officer Gauthier, I'm going to ask you, and, excuse me, Chief Gauthier, I heard you. And Chief Williams, I'll ask you to speak if you'd like to on this issue. And it has to do with the commissioners, so if you have no opinion, that's fine too. To the right. There you go.
Truly, it's a decision that comes from you guys. As a chief of police, I want to work with a professional organization, professional commission, and I think that there's compelling reasons why it can go either way. There's reasons why people that are financially and are part of the city by being taxpayers, they have a residence here, they live here, but we service a larger community than just the city of Rhinelander every day. We're the hub, we're where everybody comes to shop and work. And there's been other previous members of the Police and Fire Commission who have worked here. They own businesses here, so they are paying city taxpayers. So I can see both sides of the coin. It really comes down to you, as the 8 of you, what you decide.
Thank you. Chief Williams, anything to add?
Not really. I think Lloyd said it well. I think it's up to you. I think ultimately,
I'll have you stand up in the mic just so it's part of the record.
I think ultimately it's the mayor's decision to bring a police and fire commission member forward. So whether that's a resident of the city or a business owner of the city, it's still the mayor's appointment to be approved by a council. So it's what you guys would approve in the future.
Thank you. Eileen?
Well, he kind of answered one of my questions. I was going to ask, how do commissioners get appointed? That explains that. And my second question is, it looks like this was just since 2017, so this has only been in place for 3 years, the residency requirement. Do we know why it was changed in the first place?
I'm not sure if it was changed at that point or if it was clarified, residency versus citizen, because it had to do with the location of it and had to do with taxpayer boundary more than anything else at that time. It was a commissioner that had moved out historically, and then was removed based on this ruling, one way or the other, whether it be a definition or not. That being the case, that doesn't necessarily, in my mind, change the validity of the reasoning of it, whether it be an action that was reactionary or anything else. Our job as policymakers is to decide, is it a better policy to have somebody inside the city making decisions for our police and fire commission versus outside the city? Now, with that, and I'm going to explain my position, as it went originally, a a lot of my like mayor advisory groups or anything else, I would say you can select professionals, that you definitely know have a succinct, the housing commission, they understand the housing for our community, the economic development portion, a fair amount of it. This one in behalf just has to do with go ahead, I'm going to ask Chief to stand up again, promotions, hires, and what are the other things that they have the authority to do?
See that bus that just came by here? Our Police and Fire Commission does not have optional powers. So our Police and Fire Commission, by statute, is in charge of hiring, firing, and promotions within the police and fire departments.
So that being the case, I believe there's somebody within the residency that can make that decision. And if it was truly up to just myself at this point in my appointments, that's how I would select it. That's how our policy reads. We don't have to take action on this. It reads that way already. The whole point is we're having the discussion to see if we do need to amend it. And the one thing I've said to every part of my administration is I don't have a problem changing it. That's the beauty. We come here every 2 weeks. If we want to table it, we can come back in 2 weeks. If we want to do whatever, we can do. Tell you the truth, we can amend the amendment in 2 weeks. One of the first things I almost did was veto my own decision once. 2-3 weeks into being a mayor, I'm like, we can change, and that's okay. That being the case, that's my feeling on this issue. Did you have more to add?
Are there current vacancies on the commission?
There was a member of the commission that moved right outside of the city.
So is it currently vacant?
It is, well, as of last meeting that we had, I suggested that it is vacant based on our policy.
Gotcha.
I don't know that they've had a meeting or any discussion further on that. I think Gerald or somebody else brought this forward to discussing it. It might have been Ryan. Tom?
Could we get an opinion or some insight from Mr. Sorensen?
Sure. Don't forget to click the button.
There is no state statute that governs where a member of a police and fire commission must live. It's a policy issue. There universally, there are probably some examples, but in the cities that I've represented, I've never had a police and fire commission that had a person outside of the community serve on the police and fire commission. It's always been residents. The reading that I did in preparation for tonight, thinking maybe somebody would ask my background, suggested that you may have reasons, and some of those reasons were earlier stated, which was that the business community is such that a large portion of it would be outside the city limits, and you may have a local business person that would have some background. When you don't have optional powers, it's a lot different than when you have optional powers. In other words, when you're not allowing the department to do the discipline and some of the other things that police and fire commissions can do. Know that the purpose behind a police and fire commission, why it was originally created under state statute, was to alleviate graft and corruption. Because what was happening is city councils were appointing police as patronage jobs, and they wanted to remove law enforcement, fire department, police department from patronage positions, and that's why you set up an independent commission that was not related to the council, so that you avoided the political influence. By law, you must have 3 members of each party, or you cannot have, by law, you cannot have members, more than 3 members of the same political party on a police and fire commission. So it's one of the few places in the state where you really have to tell that you're a member of a party, if you are a member of a political party, because the statute says that no appointment shall be made that will result in 3 members of the board being part of the same political party. But as far as whether they should live in the city limits or just have a building or an interest in the community, there's no definitive language. There's been lots of writing on it, but there's nothing definitive in statute. Did that answer your question, Tom?
Yeah. Pretty much the way I feel. I think we should live in town.
Go ahead, click your button just so it gets broadcasted.
Now I
You-
don't have to speak quite so loud.
Yeah.
I agree with Steve in a respect that I think these members of the commission should live in town. It's their city, you know, and we have all city residents on the city council, otherwise we could spread out.
Just-
Thank you.
Just to make my opinion clear, I did not say I gave opinion one way or the other.
Well, no.
I'm just saying that you don't see a lot of it, but there's no statutory prohibition.
I'm pretty sure I heard him say he's buying me steak dinner.
That's corruption.
Yeah. Ryan.
Yeah, I can see both sides of this opinion, and you know, I think about our community, and I think community is important. Our community of Rhinelander is not made up of just city residents, and if you look at our dome project that just took place inside the city limits of Rhinelander at the school district, and you look at those key players that played influential roles in making that dome project happen. Those are not just city of Rhinelander residents. They are Pine Lake, Pelican, Newbold. So I think that, you know, Chief Gauthier, what he said is, I agree with that. You know, we are the hub of the community of Oneida County here. We're the county seat. And I don't know how hard it is for recruitment for the Police and Fire Commission, but we have been given a letter signed by 3 of the Police and Fire Commission members saying that they feel that it would be best to not have this, to be bound by this rule, to be city of Rhinelander residents. So I'm torn. I think that, you know, if the mayor in the future, however this goes, if the mayor decides to make his next appointment, whether it be strictly citizens of Rhinelander, or the greater Rhinelander area, I think he's going to hopefully make the best choice possible. And I think that given the option, if we went away from strictly citizens of Rhinelander, I would think that the mayor should try and steer towards citizens first. The taxpayers here in Rhinelander, but I don't know if we need to be bound by that, because I think we make up a greater area than just the 7,800 people or whatever you have in the city.
David?
Thank you. I want to echo what Ryan just said. I agree with him wholeheartedly. We are a larger community. Also, it's a request made by the Police and Fire Commission itself, and anybody who knows my record in the last 2.5 years knows I really don't like absurd legislation. If there's not a compelling reason to have something, I tend to fall on the side of not having it. It does not tie your hands to have to appoint somebody outside of the city limits. It's clearly not something that was destructive, since it's only been in effect 3 years, in terms of prior to that, something that was essential. And yeah, our first responders are part of a larger community, and I don't see it, again, I don't see a compelling reason why residency would lead to better decision outcomes with what the Police and Fire Commission are charged to do as a commission. So I would be in favor of rescinding that.
Okay. Once again, this is for discussion at this point. It doesn't have to have action. But I wanted to have it very open and in front of people.
Could I speak again?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Gerald.
I still think it's just simple logic that for our police, the fire department and police department of the city of Rhinelander should be under the control of people of Rhinelander. And I don't, we welcome all kinds of participation from people outside. The school district obviously covers way more than Rhinelander. We have a library board that's joint with other municipalities, and so we have a mix of people on that, or the airport board with the county. But this is this is specific to Rhinelander, so it seems to me that it ought. The compelling logic is that it ought to be people of Rhinelander, and I guess I'd like to hear some more about how hard it really is to get people to replace people who move out. And I'm also curious what happened before 2017. Wasn't it the general assumption that it should be people of the city, even if it wasn't in the ordinance?
Yeah, I believe that was a clarification that happened because somebody also moved out at that time. So it was a very similar circumstance. But Eileen?
I understand a lot of the discussion about how they, it is strictly tied to the Rhinelander Police Department, the Rhinelander Fire Department, and so there's the argument that it should be governed by citizens of Rhinelander. However, there are a lot of business owners in the town who don't have residency in Rhinelander. They're still protected by the fire department. They're still protected by the police department. However, their house might be, their driveway may be 100 yards towards Harshaw. So they don't technically live in the city. However, they do have an interest in the betterment of the city. And that goes for the people who shop here as well. They're protected by the fire department. They're protected by the police department.
I appreciate the discussion as it's happened. One of the largest parts of my administration that struggled with was what's the definition of community, what's the definition of the city? Because they're two separate issues. And this is probably the closest line that's been drawn where it's our community versus the city because of what it has. So once again, I'd probably ask that we just rest on it and then come forward with a motion on the next agenda or maybe even the next agenda after that. We have a policy we are following at this time. It's not hindered or anything at this point. As policymakers, we should take it to heart as to whether or not what our decision should be. So once again, I thank you for that, and I think we'll
Mayor,
move on.
if I may jump in real quick.
Yeah.
So the question was raised about what was the change in 2017, and it appears based as a look of Muni Code that the language was clarified, as I suspected, from using the word citizens to residents of the city of Rhinelander. So the definition under state statute of citizens obviously could be construed to believe that you could have non-residents become members of the commission. So that was changed. It looks like it was also changed in the instances of Board of Review. At least that's the one next to the Police and Fire Commission in the code. So that's the clarification. And then the second part as to the question about residency of police and firefighters, police officers and firefighters, the city does not have a residency ordinance. And I'm not sure where the reference in the letter comes from, but I've scoured the city ordinances multiple times. Now, state statute does prescribe limits at which the city can impose residency requirements, but based upon everything that I've been able to look, and I've shared that with the chief too, both chiefs, that we should look at whatever policy that the Police and Fire Commission or council may have adopted at some point on the question of residency if that issue comes up further. Because right now there's not an ordinance in existence that's been passed by the council that would require some form of residency of our police officers and firefighters.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, we will move on. Award of the truck bids, page 14.
Mayor, do you want to revisit the background on this?
You want to give it? Sure.
Yeah, just briefly, this was a repeat of some discussion and council action. Unfortunately, the bidders couldn't meet their obligations when we awarded them earlier in the summer. So we went out to rebid, and those bids were due last Thursday. So here we actually changed our solicitation up a little bit, and you'll see a lot broader bid responses than some of the previous method of solicitation. So the nice thing is a bit more competitiveness and certainly a few more options, and obviously you see the gamut with pricing there. But those bids were open then on Thursday last week, and so Tom Rozier and Jim Gossage were also a part of the bid opening, and Tom summarized them here with the two yellow being the low apparent bidders, which meet the minimum qualifications.
I'll accept
So
the
these are
motion.
not in addition to the ones you already awarded. These
Yeah.
are in replacement of some of them.
I will motion to accept the bid of the two vehicles from Ewell Dodge Economowoc in the amounts of $22,682 and $26,318.
Daniel.
Anderson, second.
That was Gerald with the second. Any further discussion?
I just had one question. When this went out to bid, was there, I'm not sure how it works between vehicle makes. Was the department heads okay with that specific
Absolutely.
truck, Dodge versus Chevy? I don't know if Justin Ernst had a preference for mechanic type of situations. If you could answer that for me, Jim.
As far as both water and wastewater departments are concerned, we're fine with the Dodges going with the low bid. Sure. And maybe Justin has something to add to that?
It's not Motorhead Magazine review time.
Thank you.
So there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Val, please call roll.
Mikulowski,
Aye.
Daniel,
Aye.
Rossing,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Barnett,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Holt.
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carries. Discussion and notice requirements specified in 4.07 zoning. Hearing on the application, Anderson.
Okay. I propose this item. May I speak on it then?
Yep.
Reading the minutes of the Plan Commission meeting a few weeks ago, it seemed like a lot of the discussion had to do with how people were notified or not notified of what was happening there. And I thought about in terms of right now, it's a requirement to send a letter to people within 100 feet, property within 100 feet, and put a notice in the paper. And not everybody reads the paper. Those notices can be pretty hard to understand anyway, if you try to read the fine print. So I thought first about increasing the distance so that more people would be included, maybe 300 feet or something like that. I thought about this a while back when that property on the other end of timber was up for a variance, and that didn't happen. But, you know, almost right across the street is Woodland Drive, but people on Woodland weren't notified, even though I'm sure they would consider that part of their neighborhood. And only one person in Spring Lake was notified, even though certainly others were concerned about their end of it. And so it seems like a greater distance than 100 feet would be appropriate in most places. I know most of our streets are only 66 feet wide or so, so probably somebody straight across would always be notified, but not the next lot over necessarily. Another thing, which to me seems very effective, if you don't think it's too unsightly, I go to Seattle pretty often because I have kids there, and they've been doing an awful lot of rebuilding of things, and practically every block has a lot with a sign on it that says land use action on the top, and then some description of what kind of variance or conditional use or whatever is being requested, and when the hearing is, on a sign right on the property. And it seems to me that's a good way for people in the neighborhood to notice, even if they're more than a few hundred feet away. They're probably going to see that sign. And so I guess I was wondering if we could put something like that in the ordinance. It's not 4.07, it's 5.07. And actually, if you take the section on Board of Appeals and on variances and on conditional uses, there are 3 different places where probably would want to change.
Okay. Steve, would you like to speak on?
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you that 100 feet is probably the smallest zone that I've ever seen. Generally, it's 300 feet, but I've seen as much as 500 to 1,000 feet, depending on the nature of the project. That's why I don't think you can do it universally. I think you have to look at each one of the notice provisions and try to ask yourself, as a council, what are we trying to accomplish by notice in this section? What are we trying to accomplish by notice in this section, rather than creating a universal notice period. But I think that 300 is reasonable. Now, you also want to talk about the concept of these signs and stuff. Just remember the cost factor, because that's really where you get into, if you're going to spread out the notice, you're going to spread out more mail, and you're going to spread out building signs and stuff. That means the cost, which is, now several $100s, is going to have to go up significantly, because statutorily, you're supposed to recover all the costs of notice as part of the fee structure. So from the developer's point of view, from the property owner's point of view, I want to do a variance, I want to put up a fence in my backyard, and now I've got to notify, 40 different families, and that cost figure could easily start running up in $400 or $500, $600 before you're done, because you still have to pay for the newspaper notice. You still, if you have to put up signs or something else, you get other notices. So I think it's a much broader question than one isolated example, that you really need to go through the ordinances that look at that. And I know we're reviewing our zoning ordinance, so that's probably what Terry's going to tell us.
Terry.
Actually, it's not, but, so I've been a building inspector for the city of Rhinelander for 20 years. And this is the first time in that 20 years that there's even been mention of an issue with notice. So we've done the notice the same way for 20 years. I would caution you, if you move out to the 300 feet, realize that it's going to take a lot more staff time to not only research all of those parcels within 300 feet, but then to find the proper owners and to make and address envelopes, letters, and send that stuff out. So there's not only cost for the stamps and the office supplies, but there's going to be a significant addition to staff time. And then also, if you go with the sign, and I'm not saying it's a policy decision for you, I'm just sharing what ramifications may come with it. The signs, if you're going to have professionally made signs made up so that people can easily read them, there's going to be a significant cost to that as well, and our budgets just can't handle it right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, this was for discussion, so nothing has to happen at this time. We are the policymakers. If it's something that we want to bring forward with policy, you can talk to Zach or myself that way, and we can work on the product, or you can make a motion at this time to change our notification policies. Thank you. Moving on. G, Carey Inc., personal property settlement agreement resulting in $4,145,200 in reduced value. This is page 15 in your packet. This also is just for discussion. There is no action that can be taken by the city, but this is more or less a heads up on our value issue. Zach, would you like to speak to this, or is that good?
Sure. Basically, we wanted to bring this before the council to make everyone aware that this settlement and that the city will be basically cutting significant checks back to Carey as a result of the State Department of Revenue's board's decision on this matter. I was just going to pull up to see the actual breakdown between our portion of the, give me 1 second here, the amount. But essentially, there was a piece of personal property at Carey that was originally deemed taxable. And then this was through their reporting. And then when the state came through to do a personal property audit for the 18 and 19 tax years, they discovered this. So it was quite a discovery. It's in a TIF district. So while we do have a surplus in that TIF district, having this significant of a reduced valuation is pretty substantial. The total amounts from that we'll have to rebate back is $141,516.44. So prior to issuing that, we wanted to bring it before the council, and some of that is from other taxing jurisdictions. I believe there's 14,000 of that is Oneida County, 54,000 being from the school district, and then 69,000 being from the city, I believe, and then 2,400 from Nicolay. So those are not insignificant amounts of refunds, but of course the DOR's decision is non-appealable and it is final. And just wanted to again bring that before the council, make you all aware of that before the city went ahead and issued the refunds.
Thank you. Moving on. H, the Knowles Open Records request. This is page 21 in your packet. Also for discussion if need be. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. It starts on page 20. You're correct.
Well, what in the world is this about?
Thank you, Gerald. I'll actually let our attorney address it first, and then we'll go from there. Yep.
Okay.
Microphone. Yeah. There you go.
It's one of these things that we've been. Those of us in the administration, I guess, have been criticized about all these open records requests that we've spent so much time and money on and that we don't disclose, and we're not being transparent and we're hiding things. And so we wanted the council and everybody to know that we've got another open records request, and it's a politically, it's in a sense, open records request because it's coming as part of the pending lawsuits that we're involved with. This request, I want you to recognize, is going to be potentially extremely time-consuming for our IT department because the former city
attorney.
No, this former city engineer or public works director did not back up the system, and so in a format that's going to be easily traceable, and of course that's where the employee that's being requested this information exists. So we're going to literally have to calculate, first of all, how much money it's going to cost us to do the search. We have to give that information back to the requester, and then we have to take that request and implement if the requester decides they want to spend the money to move forward. There is no quote-unquote file, but there likely could be communications. And I also will tell the group that one of the policies that administratively we're doing right now is we're not going to do investigative work. If it's there, it's there. If it's not, it's not. We're not going to dig and dig and dig. That's not the role of the city. The role of the city is to provide the information that's available and that we know exists. We obviously don't hide anything, so if we know it exists, we're going to give them to the people that make the open records request. But again, one of the reasons it's on the agenda tonight is to let you all know what the kind of requests are that we're getting. We've also had a couple others recently, and this is where you hear people criticizing, and I've heard it personally, the legal fees. Well, if we keep getting open records requests, it's going to cost a lot of money because we have to go through every single record. We have to determine whether or not the information is such that it can be released. Then once we determine whether it can be released, we have to tell the person who was the communicative person that they may have a claim to stop the release of the information. We have to wait a judicious amount of time for that person to react before we can then release. And it's time consuming. And I just want you all to be aware that we are doing the best we can with the staff that we have and to try to keep costs at a minimum. Now, the new system that we're developing, if everybody plays by the rules and everything is copied and put into the system and it's categorized as we're hoping it will be, that is going to make the job of open records requests a lot more efficient. But a lot of the requests we get are not the typical, I'd like to know how much you spent on street repair last year. That's pretty easy. We can do that kind of stuff. But it's when somebody says, I would like every single email that was ever shared from the year 2018 through the year 2020 between these two individuals. And then you have the caveat, which the city has possession or control of. Well, in this day and age of electronics, it's why I keep making the speech. Don't be making all these electronic communications. Because it just creates a massive expense for the city and could be for the person that's requesting it. I don't know what else you want me to say, Mayor.
Nope, that's it. From my behalf, as we look at this, because it's a cross-section of a prior issue, then moving into a new issue, was to clarify the situation I had at that point. And what I can tell you is at the point of that open records request, as far as Justin Ernst was concerned, I followed the advice of our attorney at the time, which was Carrie Milchovich. So that can be documented as a point of notice for this. Also, Justin, you're here, is that correct? Can you explain what you received from that request?
I'd rather not.
Okay.
We're in litigation, and I'm not going to put Justin.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Moving on. Review of the CN grant application from the tree board. This is page, oh my gosh, can't remember, 22. Is that correct? What? Yeah, thank you.
Mayor, did you want me to say anything on this?
What's that? Actually, I'm letting them read it, and then we'll wait for a motion
gotcha.
to.
Sorry.
I'll
I
accept
just
a
can't
motion.
quite see you on the screen here, so
Oh,
I'm not sure
sorry.
if you're giving me a cue or not.
I'll accept a motion to.
Roslyn, I'll make a motion to accept the CN grant application from the tree board.
Larson, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Zach, anything you want to weigh in on it?
It's a no-cost item from the city beyond what was already budgeted. I think Tom expressed that pretty well in his comments. The deadline is December 1st, so that's why we're looking for approval tonight.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. Introduction of unfinished business, the discussion of the administrator search and consideration of allocation of resources to perform a candidate search. It was discussed by this council in work session that we reach out to a external source. That being the case, I'm going to give you an update on the search. As of November 20th, it closed. We have 11 applicants. Disclosure. Zach, do you have anything you want to disclose or no?
I'll let you disclose it.
All right. Zach also applied for that position at the 11th hour. That being the case, I worked this weekend. The 20th was right before the weekend. The calculated structure of weighing the resumes and the things against each other has not been done yet. Thank you has been sent out to the 11 applicants for their interest, and that we will reach out to them soon. That being the case, you will receive either the 10 or 11, the 11 a weighted scale first, of which we can bring 3, 4, 5, 6 to you, or we can open up, or we can once again extend. The reason I asked for resources or allocation is even to bring in IPR to discuss a breakdown or anything else. If there was a charge, I don't want to accrue any charges without your approval. So that being the case, that is my update, and I will accept if anybody wants to make a motion to allow me to spend any money, if it's hiring an outside group, or if you want me to bring forward an outside group, or how you want to do this. At this point, like I said, 11, I think we discussed it with Steve today from the locations. We've hit Arizona, Florida, all around the United States are where the 11 came from. But
what all are we going to be asking this outside organization to do?
That was a part of the work session, and it had to do with whether or not we'd break it down by piecemeal, because we have done a fair amount of it. I did discuss that with and it was Rick Hermes from IPR. Rick Hermes also, when we were talking to the insurance carrier, sat on CivMix board for 30 years. That's how we first came into contact with him, is when we were dealing with other issues that had to do with HR, and didn't get an answer. I asked them directly, do you trust Rick Hermes? And they said yes, so that's why I went that direction, for transparency reasons. That being the case, I brought up to him where we were in the search, what we were doing and what was discussed. He's looked at it and has no problem coming to give a breakdown. That being the case, I don't know that that's free of cost. And at this point, to keep calling these people half the time, it costs you money. So I was asking for any beginning point of resources, of which magically finding this administrator would come from. That would be the policymakers. David.
Do you have a guess on an amount at this time?
Yeah, the previous searches were $20,000 and up. The first one, I think, was signed November 2nd by Keith Cost, brought before council February 14th to approve with GovHR. David.
So for clarification here, we have 11 applicants.
Correct.
Currently. Is it possible for us as a council to review those applications and then make a decision based on what on the outcome of that discussion, whether or not we want to move forward with a consultant?
The consideration here, I'm going to answer this temporarily, is one, HR, and even looking for that HR position filled prior to guide us through that would be great. But I'm going to ask our attorney once again to weigh in, as he's seen many people get hired.
Yeah, you got to be real careful about full distribution of resumes or applications unless you told the applicants they were going to be fully exposed to a group of people. Most applicants expect that their application is going to a small group of people who will screen those applications, and then you'll go to the applicant and say, we've screened you and we think you're a good applicant or not a good applicant. And then you'll ask them if they are willing to allow that material to go forward to the governmental body. I don't think that at this point, other than the small, being the mayor and the his assistant, or whoever you want in your small group. Again, before you go to the policy group, which you all are, because again, once it gets to that point, then we've got to be very careful about the rules as far as releasing names, as far as disclosures, and all those things. So, candidly, there's probably people on that list that you're not going to keep, but I mean, you can do what you want. I just want you to be very careful of how you approach it.
The other motions that I would accept, not only the resources, but if it was to establish a committee to bring forth 3, or to search out their references. I would hesitate to do that at this point if they weren't even going to be a part of that search, as far as if we extended it. Yes. David.
More clarification. And I'm sorry if you already answered this, but there are 2 positions here, right? The HR position, the administrator position.
Correct.
Were we talking specifically about the HR position, or were we talking specifically about the administrator position?
We're talking about the administrative position. Okay. I'm pointing out the fact that HR has not been hired yet to help through those same technical issues of do not disclose these names. These are the things that you need to do. Seeking that professional help would either come from an outside consultant, or a group that would assume the responsibility together, or...
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to do all 11 of you getting, 11 applicants, of all 8 of you going through then we'd have to set up a closed session, we'd have to contact the candidates, we'd have to go through that process, and if you want to do that, that certainly can be done. I think the concept tonight is, do you want to hire a consultant? Because if you don't hire a consultant, then we've got to approach this administratively a little bit differently, because consultant would be the one that would go through and check the references and do all those kind of things.
Tom.
So you said the last time it was $20,000 and up to hire an outside consultant to do this?
Yeah, and I'm not sure what in totality we paid out to them, and I'm not going to put Wendy on the spot. She's not going to
Right,
know.
no, that doesn't matter to the question I have. But, you know, somewhere around $20,000, but they did all the work, correct?
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
When I went through the first portion of this, we were covering a fair amount of what I think we got from that contract. And I looked at that contract in detail this week. I think it was found in a search. That's why we knew when it was signed and anything else. That being the case, there's parts of that service that definitely, you know, are feasible as far as that goes, and probably could be broken down. I wouldn't want it. If you were to sit here and say right now, do this, I wouldn't feel comfortable with it. Mm-hmm. You know, even, I mean, we'd pay him more in him advising me on lawyer fees while we did it.
I guess my question is, since we've already done a lot of the legwork, got the applicants and all that kind of stuff, do they still need the $20,000 to do it, the last part of it?
Correct. I'm gonna definitely answer no without a solid answer, and that came from IPR just when I discussed the situation with them. Yeah. David?
No, I'm done.
I still think that we need to have a consultant. And it is a breath of fresh air to hear that it will not be as expensive given the amount of work that we have done. However, these things are very tricky, and I think that the city needs to have all the help it can get, frankly.
Right. I have no problem having this discussion out loud for that very reason.
How much an approval in terms of amount do you think you would need to pursue a consultant?
Look at Wendy's face. That is obviously the key. Is when you do this, it chisels from somewhere. So when we make decisions as policymakers, and this goes to our insurance carrier or anything else, when we make these decisions, it chisels from somewhere else. And the weight of that. So that's what I'm asking you to do, is share the weight of that brunt. Be brave, be policymakers. If you think to not extend further than $5,000, I can go out to companies and say, listen, we've done this. What can you give us for the $5,000? If you don't give me a dollar amount or anything else, I basically talking to them every week for no reason. Tom.
I think since the baseline was $20,000, that obviously our mayor is going to be frugal about this and not.
Wendy's scared now.
Yeah, I don't. I think maybe I'd like to hear from Wendy about this.
Wendy, if you'd like to speak on this, that's great. If you have nothing to offer, you don't have to offer anything.
The only thing that I would really like to offer is, I know that we are interviewing and recruiting for the HR position. I think before you jump to hiring a recruitment company, which we've gone through this process twice, that perhaps you should just hold off for a little bit to see who we can fill the HR position with, to see if we have the expertise from within to run with the 11 applicants. But it's still up to you. I mean, I do know, Zach and I know there is an area where we could pull the money from, but I prefer to be very frugal. So it's still your decision.
Eileen? Thank you.
Before we make a motion on this, I'm thinking none of us here have HR experience. So bringing it to all of us makes no sense. If we could make a motion along the lines of having you reach out to this person that you've talked with already to get an estimate from him based on the information we already have available, that makes the most sense to me. And then voting on a dollar amount at our next meeting, provided we aren't further along in the HR hiring process, so that we can make a decision at that time whether we wait or whether we move forward with the consultant.
That being the case, and this is the way I look at the options myself as far as that goes, was one is if you were going to come up with a subcommittee so that it gets vetted fairly and then brought to you. Once again, I have the scoring system and everything else, but this is a fair amount of time, and if we're not going to pick from it because we were going to hire somebody else, it really holds very little purpose. That being the case, Wendy brought up a good point with a professional of HR. We significantly advance our own hiring process, period, point blank, and we can have confidence in that. That being the case, even with the delay, because you talk about the delay for even 2 weeks, what I would suggest is even a motion from you to extend the contract we have with Zach until that is positioned. Either way, we come to a December 31st date coming up real quick, where that puts us in a very precarious, situation. Tom?
How far along are we in that HR search?
God, I hope really far. I believe we have one or two more interviews in person, and so we went through the phone interviews. We've had some, and once again, this is probably not good to discuss out loud from an HR perspective, but yeah, I know. This is what it puts us in that position, is without an HR professional to say this will be discussed this time because that's when it's correct. I think we're far along. But we've noticed today, even when it comes to what we think we're far along on, i.e. truck bids that we had settled way last spring.
I think that just saying that you're far along is
Thank
good
you.
because there are actual applicants, there's actual people who are waiting. We're creating things that really shouldn't be discussed.
Amen.
Right.
Thank you. So
let's make a motion. Barnett, I make a motion to ask the mayor to reach out to the headhunters, I guess is what they are, and that's probably politically incorrect these days, but I don't know, recruitment organization to find a dollar amount on what they would charge for, depending, for how far along we are in our own search. I would also like to add to that to extend Zach Verwink's contract until we do figure out where we are, hire an HR person.
Given that he accepts that.
Yeah, given that he accepts it. To hire an HR person or to fill that position.
Do we want to, would we rather do a concrete date on that for a contract rather than an open-ended, leaving it based on something else for Zach specifically?
Do I have to say amend my motion?
Can we, yeah, I mean.
There's two different motions.
I really do think we're starting to talk about, we're starting about personnel issues. We really should be in closed session and talking, because we're affecting people's lives, and and we need to have those people have input. Otherwise, you're going to get yourself down a tunnel that you aren't going to want to be there, because there's all kinds of factors. As Eileen said, as somebody that does human resources, I really would like to see this done correctly. So I would really like to see us wait till the next council meeting, have a closed session, discuss it, closed session, where we can talk about people, we can talk about some of these factors and not violate the confidentiality rules that we are.
All right, I want it done correctly too, so I'll rescind my motion. Do I make a motion to, no? So, all right, I rescind my motion, and I guess we'll wait until the closed session.
Thank you.
I mean, that doesn't prevent, just so you understand, that doesn't prevent the mayor from going out and finding out what the cost would be and those things. He he heard you. I mean,
Yeah.
I think he did.
Yeah, it's one when it's stated out loud so that I have a marching order, because right now the marching order was just get one hired. Well, that doesn't do me a whole heck of a lot of good. David Holt.
Thank you. I'll motion to table this until the December 14th meeting, where it will be revisited and discussed at that point.
Barnett, second.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Motion carries. All right. Yeah. Selection of carriers for workers' compensation, general liability, crime, and cyber space services. This will also wait, and we'll move this to or I'll take a motion to move this to after closed session, if that's the case.
Ross, I would make a motion to move selection of carriers for workers' comp, general liability, crime, and cyber insurance services to after our closed session item, if we choose to go into closed.
Larson, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Update on the Routes to Recovery COVID-19 CARES Act grant submittal. I don't know if Wendy or Zach, are you taking this?
Wendy can chime in too, but essentially we've concluded our submittal to that. The deadline was the 7th, and we're well past that. No, sorry, not the 7th, the 17th. Yeah, last Tuesday. So we've got those dollars. We'll wait for a reimbursement notification from them, but we did submit beyond our original allocation, in which case there might be dollars that exceed the original threshold that was awarded. Wendy, I didn't ask for a ledger on this for the council packet last week, but if you did want to speak to it, or if council members had questions, I'm sure we could address them.
While she's walking up there, one of the things I want to do is I want to applaud this portion of the staff and the exception of this. This is of good savings to the city as far as working with it and going above and beyond and looking for the avenues of which we could gain this. Thank you.
So we had an allocation of, I believe it was 126,400 or 800, and we did have enough. This last request submittal was for just over 84,000, and we were provided guidance from the state as well through the League of Municipalities of Wisconsin that we should list extra expenses in case there is unclaimed allocations from surrounding communities. And then they would at least have the information, a start on the information to go and look to see if there could be another distribution. So we claimed our full amount, and then we also listed a couple of items that would give them an idea for future funding as well.
Thank you. All right, with that, if necessary to convene into closed session per Wisconsin State Statute 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties or investment of public funds or conducting of other specific public business whenever competitive bargaining reasons require a closed session. Discussion with legal counsel with the Green Gulf Partners and the Northwoods Golf Club Management. Discussion of competitive insurance proposals.
Rossing, I'd make a motion to go into closed session for the above stated reasons.
Daniel, second.
I want to vote against this because I think that these are both things we've discussed in public in the past, and I don't understand why it has to be closed session now.
Okay. Val, please call roll.
Daniel,
Aye.
Rossing,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Barnett,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Anderson,
Nay.
Holt,
Aye.
Mikulowski.
Aye.
Ayes have it. We will go into closed session in 2 minutes. Welcome back, Gerald. Zach
Thank you.
and Zach. All right. We'll return to open session. On the issue of Green Golf Partners and Northern Golf Club management and their agreement, there's no action taken. On the discussion of competitive insurance proposals, we have discussion to have in open. Eileen.
To begin discussion on the competitive insurance, we did ask department heads their input, and I read some of them, and having no personal experience, I'm going to rely on what I was told by those four of the department heads. So I know where my vote would go. So can I say? I would be more prone to go with the League of Municipalities insurance over CIVMIC, despite the fact that we've had an ongoing relationship with CIVMIC. It's not necessarily about what was good for us in the past. It's what's good for us going forward. And since the League of Municipalities is offering quite a bit extra for less dollars, it just makes more sense to me.
Tom.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with Eileen. I too have talked to several department heads asking their experiences and what have you. And I would have to agree to go with their experience, since, like, especially us newer council people who have no history whatsoever with CIVNIC whatsoever, relying on the experiences of others with CIVNIC that have had them. I will say that saving money is a big thing right now, and that little caveat of the League of Municipalities would get my vote for that.
All right.
I want to agree with that too, that if League of Municipalities insurance can, for a lower price, give us, it looks like, some advantageous things like the dark store assessment protection and things like that, it sounds like a good thing to try.
Anything else? Carrie.
I too have talked to employees and some department heads, and so that's how I'm going to be basing my decision, with also because of the cost savings. So I'm leaning more towards the league as well.
Anything else? Otherwise, I'll accept a motion.
I will make a motion to pursue insurance carrier with League of Wisconsin Municipalities Mutual Insurance.
Larson, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Those opposed?
No.
Oh, Tom Kelly.
Yeah.
Tom Kelly with the no.
I'm a big fan of loyalty.
Sir. Yeah, I know. You turned on your mic. I'm proud.
It's on.
As a procedural matter, do we need to take a roll call on that or not?
I
Expending a
don't
dollar
believe so,
amount?
because it's between the two, but to tell you the truth, we will take a roll call for the sake of taking a roll call. There's nothing, no harm, no foul. Val, please call roll.
Rossing,
Aye.
Kelly,
No.
Barnett,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Anderson,
Aye.
Holt,
Aye.
Mikulowski,
Aye.
Daniel.
Aye.
Ayes have it, the motion carries. At this point, we have future agenda items. If there's, oh yeah, wait, we moved it down.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
There was a question, I think it's an appropriate question, and I guess I would turn to Zach a little bit on this. What is the proper name of the insurance carrier that's providing the insurance through the league?
It was correctly noticed in the the motion. However, I would ask that there be a follow-up motion to initiate the property service, and that was the recommendation both presented by the league and by CIVMIC, which is the Municipal Property Insurance Corporation. MPIC is the acronym. So if we could have a follow-up action on that as well.
Yeah, so we've approved the motion to have our liability coverage through the League Mutual, but now we need to take our property insurance and act on that.
Correct.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to clarify, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I will accept the motion.
Rossing, I'd make a motion to select MPIC as our property insurance carrier.
Holt, second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Val, please call roll.
Kelly. Aye. Barnett.
Aye.
Larson.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Holt.
Aye.
Mikulowski.
Aye.
Daniel.
Aye.
Rossing.
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carries. As we move on to 12 future agenda items, they are as listed, and for the public out there, it is preliminary 2021 municipal borrowing scope will be on there. Discuss of yard waste drop-off site, brought by Alderperson Larson. Approval of the AT&T lease amendment, non-union working resolution. David, anything to add?
Yes, I would like to add the Police and Fire Commission letter request regarding the residency requirement, and also discussion of the December 28th meeting. The last meeting that we had last year was canceled because it was during the holiday season, and I wanted to raise that as a question, whether or not we were going to have a meeting on the last December, I believe December 28th, 2020.
Since you're suggesting this, there has been work product on the consideration, but yeah, we will have that on our next meeting.
Wonderful. That's all.
All right, we are adjourned.
Thank you, Zach.
Have a good night, all.
Night.